at work, you will encounter it. You will encounter people who have an inflated sense of self-importance, that are overly self-indulged, that feel entitled, that definitely have a deep-seated need for validation from others and an admiration from others. I think that's a huge one. And you will encounter these people. Like it's a fact. And so the question then becomes, can you spot it? And how do you maneuver it? Because it's not as black and white as saying, like, I shall not engage with narcissists ever in my career. It's never that simple.
Hey man, have you ever been investigated by HR? Because I have.
No, that is not an achievement that I have in my a notch that I have in my belt. So.
It is a feather in my cap, and its feather came from the feather of a duck's ass. So I want to talk to you about narcissists and how that relates to why I was investigated by HR at my previous company for about a month and a half. So narcissist is a strong word, and it's a hard one to define because, and even pull statistics around because, one, if somebody's a narcissist, they're probably not taking a survey saying that they're a narcissist. That's one of the traits of it. It's like, I'm not a narcissist, you're a narcissist, and then like it's manipulative. So yeah. So it's really hard to quantify, but the reality is when we work and we're going through our careers, you're going to at least stumble upon a few, and there's going to be a lot more that have narcissistic tendencies, even if they're not fully blown narcissists on the far side of the scale, right?
1000%.
I made one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made in my leadership career was hiring a particular fellow who blew my socks off during the interview process. But then fast forward 6 months later, I realized I made the biggest mistake in trying to fire him and put him on a PIP. He smelled the scenario coming a mile away, and instead he made up a bunch of false claims and reported them to HR so that it protected him for a period of time while he found another job. So imagine this scenario, right? Oh, we hire this guy. 2 months in, I'm like, ooh, this is probably a bad idea. So I start talking with my boss, and I'm like, how do we get this guy clear expectations to turn things around? A month later, it probably waited way too long, but a month later, I had a conversation with him, just setting the tone, and followed up with an email. For those of you that don't know, if you've never been on a performance improvement plan, if your manager has a hard conversation with you and they immediately follow up with an email to you, you're probably on a list somewhere of not so good stuff.
You don't want to be on a PIP, by the way. PIP
don't
equals bad. It sounds cute and fun. It's not.
It's not. No, you don't want to be there. And if you're following along, if you're one of our listeners, you probably will never be there. But so this person is not stupid. Narcissists typically are not stupid. They're very intelligent most times. So he smelled this coming from a mile away. So at month 3, started getting those gears in motions, and I all of a sudden noticed a much different behavior out of him. It never took anything accountable on himself. It was always deflective. It was always somebody else's fault. He would have little flashes of the pan of something that he did, and then he would back away. So then month 5 turns around, and I'm like, all right, boss, like we got to do this. So finally did a formal meeting, sent a follow-up email. And right when I did that, the next morning I woke up to an email from HR forwarding a bunch of claims that I was sexually harassing people, that I was sending inappropriate stuff, that I was playing favoritism with the team, all these things that could have gotten me fired. And at the time, I was actually in Brazil visiting Gabby's family. And for those 4 to 6 weeks, it was like such a nerve wracking scenario because I was like, this could affect my entire career, right? Imagine, if something comes up that even though that it's not true, like who you don't know, it's not in your control when there's an investigation on you at that point,
Yeah, you were bugging out. I remember this. It was crazy.
bugging out, and nothing came of it. Like the truth came to light at the end of the day, but that's a cautionary tale for the world that's out there professionally. Like, how do you navigate while being yourself and while having fun? There are people that you cannot always trust 100%. And at that time in my life, I had never had any scenario like that I came across in my professional career. So I was like leading with way more humor, and I was being loose with words and all this stuff. And after that, it changed the way I approached things, you know? Um, so it's just, I would love to unpack that with you. I just wanted to start with that story because that's the impetus for this conversation. Is like, I lived the pain of being too unguarded and not being eyes wide open to the potential dangers of somebody that doesn't care about you at all. It doesn't care about the truth. They just care about themselves. Right. So whether somebody's a narcissist or not, there are people with tendencies and they're going to put themselves always first. So like, navigating that is such an important and underrated skill.
Yeah. This is definitely one of those things that's a work and life skill, but in the workplace, it can be felt much more acutely and it can have much more outsized impact, I think. In your scenario, you were doing kind of everything the way that you had normally done it, and it had served you perfectly well up until that point, and you thought you were kind of going by the appropriate book, and he tried to burn you. He didn't, like, because the truth, ultimately prevails in most scenarios, but sometimes it doesn't, and it's very concerning and lose a lot of your mental bandwidth and stuff if you're being investigated by HR. It's really scary. But I think the point is really important that you mentioned at the beginning, that narcissism is a spectrum, and no matter what at work, you will encounter it. You will encounter people who have an inflated sense of self-importance, that are overly self-indulged, that feel entitled, that definitely have a deep-seated need for validation from others and an admiration from others. I think that's a huge one. And you will encounter these people. Like, it's a fact. And so the question then becomes, can you spot it? And how do you maneuver it? Because it's not as black and white as saying, like, I shall not engage with narcissists ever in my career. It's never that simple. What if it happens to become your boss, or happens to become your skip level, or your C-suite? What then? What if it's somebody you hired? Those scenarios are not nearly as cut and dry or white and black and white. So yeah, I agree. I think that's it's a tool set to build here.
Do you think that narcissism comes from a place of overconfidence or more from a place of insecurity?
Insecurity, 100%. And I think it masquerades as overconfidence. But and as a younger me, I would say that I would probably have the opposite answer. I would say it's like, oh, these people are like so overconfident. That's why they have this overinflated sense of self-importance, or they, thrive on like the admiration of others. Then you grow up and you learn about life a little bit, and you engage with enough of these people, and then you realize, like, oh no, you just have a set of like deeply seated insecurities that are manifesting in different ways for you. And I actually think that's quite a freeing thing. That was a very freeing thing for me, is like recognizing that some of these people, they happen to, like, often, at least in my experience, narcissists have mostly been people that have achieved more of the traditional markers of success, They're like super senior title, have made a lot of money, maybe have had an exit or two, maybe we acquired their company, and they have this really, really big ego and sense of importance.
And that's what I mean about like narcissists tend to probably be really smart because they can play the game. Everything else is detached. Like they don't have no emotion. They don't care about you. It's all about self-serving. So they're literally willing to step on your head so that they can reach higher. Right. Yeah. Ever since becoming a father, I've realized that I was like, wow, my toddler is a narcissist. So then I was like, I made the connection. I was like, a narcissist is literally just a toddler that hasn't grown up.
That's a great way to put it, man. Ben, you little narcissist.
No, mine. You want to share that with our neighbor Macklin? You know, she wants to play at the scooter. No, mine. You know, it's like, oh.
Gabby walks in on you just scolding Ben, calling him a narcissist in the toy room.
You're being a narcissist. What did we talk about?
Yeah.
Oh, so, like, awesome. I'm curious. In the workplace, how do you spot? What are some patterns you would look for in like trying to get some understanding of, oh, that might be a red flag. That might be a person that I should watch out for.
Hey there, real quick. Can you do us a quick favor and hit the subscribe button down there somewhere? As a new and growing pod, subscribes are really, really important for us, for people to find us. You know, we do this for free to provide you value in your work and in your life. And if you could just do this one thing for us, it would really help us to continue providing that value. So real quick subscribe, back to the video. Happy listening. Yep. I've got a couple. I'm sure we can probably kick some of these back and forth. Here's a perfect one for me. And this one has been 100% accurate 100% of the time. If there is a person who can sit at around a lunch table and you're all just kind of chatting and talking about work and your careers or whatever, and they obviously have to be kind of center of attention, right? But they're talking about all of this great stuff that they had done at the company and sharing all of these battle stories from previous companies and great successes that they had with their product. And, you know, some of the stories are good and everyone's listening along and stuff. But then somebody else starts sharing their experience completely unrelated to them. And the narcissist checks out. Couldn't be more uninterested in the conversation, looks at their phone, disengages, doesn't ask questions, doesn't ask them about anything, doesn't laugh. Like that that is such a telltale sign of a narcissist to me.
It's a great tech. Yeah. Because they don't have the empathy, right? So they're not curious about others. Like they're not on stage. So
exactly. They couldn't be more uninterested in that conversation when it shifts away from them and all of the great things that they had accomplished in their career. Narcissist.
Interesting.
And yeah, I don't know. I could go on that one for a minute. You go.
One red flag for me is if there is some feedback that's other than you're the best. If there's some growth feedback or constructive feedback, or somebody shares something that doesn't paint them as this perfect golden girl or boy, and it's just all deflection, no accountability, just, well, Susie didn't do this, or this process is shit, or, you know, that is like the worst for me, is like, oh, you can't take feedback. You are that much, even it might not be a narcissist, but at the very least, you have a fragile ego and you're not very coachable, right? So for me, that's like, as a hiring manager, that's one of the things I now like probe into, is like, how coachable are you? Narcissists are not coachable.
Right. One more that I have is they thrive on emotional conversations or emotional argument. So, and they'll tend to pull the conversation into that. So they'll default to shouting when shouting doesn't need to happen, when a rational conversation could happen, they'll shout instead. They'll
Have
have
you
trouble.
experienced that in a working scenario where somebody's shouting like that? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. 100%. 100%. Sometimes it's just shouting, not at like anyone in particular, just at the fact that like this is ridiculous and da 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 da, just shouting in general, not even at anyone in particular. Talking about maybe the company direction or somebody who's not in the room. And it works in the opposite direction too. Is it's like they thrive in being like the really funny person. And so again, like they have to be the center of attention. They have to be like they have to be the really funny person. If they're not the center of attention and the person that's making everybody laugh and joke, like they'll disengage and they'll try to pull the conversation into that like funny land. Sometimes it feels forced. That one's a bit more subtle, but that one is also a pretty strong sign to me as well.
One other indication, I guess is the right word, that somebody's a narcissist. I find that narcissists are really good at finding those that are susceptible for like the people that can be under their thumb. Have you ever if you ever pinpointed a narcissist, they typically have the closest people around them are the most submissive or at least the most naive to the narcissistic sort of tendencies that they could basically do all of their bidding. Like narcissists are really good. And this is the same thing for like relationships. If you notice in some of the documentaries, the classic narcissist, I forget what the name of it, we're watching it on Netflix right now. The young couple, she quit her job. They went out and traveled the world and become a vlogger. And this guy ends up like killing her at the end, but he was a classic narcissist.
Okay.
And
just pepper that in there.
Just you're
getting murdered, but yeah.
I'm getting murdered. He was really good at identifying her early as somebody that he could manipulate the emotions of her to say, "Oh, don't go out with your friends. I'm so sad without you," and like have these explosive moments of like rage. Or at one point, he stole her wallet and her ID so she couldn't go out with her friend. And then the next day, he came back. "Oh, I'm so sorry, baby. It's just because I love you." So like it's like playing on the emotions of both sides, like the super highs and the super lows of individuals. There are people like that are very susceptible and naive to the tendencies of a narcissist. So like an indication to me is like if you look at a narcissist, look at the people around them. You're not going to have two alphas that are close friends that are narcissists. A narcissist and a narcissist in a room, they're going to like oil and water.
Yeah. Is there a little band of folks around them that are always deferential to their opinions? When leader narcissist makes a joke, everyone's like, ha ha ha.
Just kissing ass to like the boss, like, "Oh, yeah, okay, all right, that's it." So this person, the boss chose this person because why? Everything's about them. Right?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, like a narcissist leader is probably is a magnet for kiss asses, right? And it makes a ton of sense. They need those people to stroke their ego, and those people get like, that feeling of protection or whatever in return, especially if they're in a position of power. So they're a magnet for that sort of stuff. So there's another telltale sign phrase. If you see like the ass kissing like meter going up, and there's many people doing it, you're probably dealing with a narcissist as well.
And that leads me to like the effects, right? So those are some of the indications of a narcissist. I want to get into what to do about it, how to navigate it. What are some tactics that people can use to handle that unscathed and not raise it up into a point where it's going to be bad on you. But one of the effects as a manager, if you have somebody on your team and they are a narcissist and it goes unchecked, that you're going to be surprised how fast that poison, how fast that toxicity spreads throughout the team. If you've noticed it, other people have too. And if that just becomes, "Oh, that's the way Johnny is," then it's going to affect everybody, not just the person, not just you, everybody. So you need to nip it in the bud fast. that was part of my story before about the HR investigation. I caught it way too late. And what happened? I, I was under investigation by HR,
But
wrongly, of course.
yeah.
But as an individual contributor, it's very important for you to start recognizing those patterns. And there are far more patterns than we just laid out. But if you're not sure, play it safe. Set clear boundaries, right? Like the mistake that I made early in my career is I was way too open and way too loose with my words and the way I behave. I was bringing my true authentic self, but sometimes it teetered on not unprofessional. The experienced me now looks back and says, I could have been a little bit more buttoned up in these scenarios, right? I could have protected myself more. So there is a clear line between how you act in your personal life and how you act professionally. Both need your authentic self, but there is a wrapper around the professional self that you need to just be aware of. That's just part of the thing.
Right. So if you see these kinds of signs that we were just describing, maybe around, if that person is around, you're just going to be a little more buttoned up. You're not going to be loose with your words. You're not going to make as many jokes that may push a boundary. You are going to just keep it up the middle about the work stuff that you have to be done and try to be very precise about that. That's your point. Okay. Yeah, I get that.
What's a way that you, if you indicate, okay, red flag on this guy or this girl, how do you handle it? Do you have a story or two or like a tactic that you use?
So most of the time that I've encountered it, candidly, it's been folks that either I report into or some kind of leadership in levels above me. And so you can't. It's like back to my original comment. Like it's not just so easy to remove yourself from that situation. But my strategy has always been like, I don't know how else to say this, is like keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Like you don't want to be friends with a narcissist. Like it's not the goal. It's certainly not mine. However, like you can give them little like bites to appeal to their ego. You can let them go on a story about all of their past work successes and stuff, and feign interest for a minute, to navigate that relationship strategically. If you're going to be my boss, or if you're going to be my boss's boss, or whatever, like I have a vested interest in like figuring out how to get this into a workable scenario for me, or leave, right? But before I do that, I'm going to see if I can massage the situation to mutually benefit both of us. Like I'm trying to grow and be here, and I have my own goals. And so a tactic that I have used is like, I'm going to give you a little bit of what you want. Like I know exactly what you want, Mr. like ego driven person. You want me to like listen and care about all the things that you that you talk about. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of that, and that's going to build some social capital with you, and that I can leverage in the future. And so without being like super specific on names or like people or time,
Tell me everything.
you have to stop record. But I think that I honestly think that that's just a fine play if you're definitely if you're in more of like a subordinate position to a narcissist.
Interesting. Which it makes sense because of the power dynamic, right? In a personal life scenario, psychologists would totally say that that's not the right play because they want you to be emotionally neutral. Don't play into it one way or the other. But what you're saying is that because this person has power and they have influence over your career, you might need to play the game a little bit. Don't kiss their ass on a public call and then you're going to make everybody else look at you like, what the hell? Sam just bent the knee to this guy? Like what? Because then it's going to have other implications. Now your reputation is the ass kisser. You don't want to be the ass kisser. But doesn't mean you can't play a little bit of curiosity game.
Yeah, exactly. Like I fashion myself as a genuinely curious person. If there was somebody that I liked sitting next to me at dinner, rambling on about their about their experience, I may ask them a question or two about it, and maybe there's something to be learned. I'll do that same thing knowing that there's a narcissist sitting next to me if it's strategically beneficial for me.
I act much better when or not act much better, but like I'm much more confident with the known knowns. Like if I know who you are, if I know you're a narcissist, if I've labeled you as such, I can play the game. Where I do it, where I've gotten myself into trouble is not identifying or putting you in a category early enough. And there's this like gray area of kind of feeling it out at the beginning. In those scenarios, like I've said too much and I haven't categorized them early. So I think like that labeling part, if you can understand the patterns and come up with your own list of traits and behaviors that you've identified in your own experience and experiences of others, that's going to be very helpful. And a lot of this is life experience. You can't expect a 20-year-old to have all of the pattern recognition down. Like you're going to have to figure it out. But while you get up to the point where you're experienced, there's no harm in playing a little bit more safe, and being more guarded as a default.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Playing it safe, being more guarded. Another one is just say less. If they're trying to get either admiration out of you or an emotional reaction out of you, you can just be very cryptic and concise with your responses. Yep, sounds good. That's a point of view. I agree, that's a point of view. Can we move on? Be very, very cryptic in response, and don't give them that beneficial, don't give them that satisfaction of an emotional reaction. If they're getting emotional and they want to bring you along on that journey, like I wouldn't go on that journey with them. It's like I think the broad guidance on like dealing with these kinds of folks is like, don't play their game. So if they are like getting emotional, like don't go with them on that. If they're pressing you to get emotional, don't go with them on that. If they want praise or admiration, keep it tight. Again, like sometimes I think like the power dynamic thing like we described, but broadly, like don't try not to play their game.
Try not to play their game. And along those lines, they will sometimes play it out to see if you're willing to talk shit about other people, right? They will come to you and under this guise of venting, like, oh, this guy, like, can you believe this process or this decision was made? Or did you see this person totally bomb in a presentation?
Everyone's an idiot. Like other functions.
Everybody's an idiot.
Yeah.
Do not, even if you believe, right, if you are aligned with the feedback that's given, this is the line where you should never cross into it unless you 100% trust the other person on the other side. You do not want to put yourself in a scenario where you could be quoted, because especially to a narcissist, you will be quoted because you are just a means to an end. You are a tool. So if you're going to affirm what the other person's saying, they're going to take those words, copy paste it, say it over here and out you. If there's any benefit for them to doing so, they will, so don't play this rumor mill game at work. That's a good no matter what, narcissists or not, don't talk behind other people's backs, but especially to a narcissist, that's very dangerous territory.
Couldn't agree more.
Man, I'm fired up about this topic because it's very, I've learned so much the hard way that I want so badly for other people to learn from my pain that like, it's like a very near and dear topic to my heart because.
Well, the frustrating part for you, I feel like, is that you were acting upon it. You had recognized that there was a problem and you were in the middle of acting upon it and doing things the right way and by the book and like,
I recognized it not as they were a narcissist, but they sucked at their job.
Yeah.
I only learned the other part when I started taking action. So all of the experiences leading up to that, like,
yeah, and if you would have been able to do it differently, you would have known. You would have, like, we had the signs that we talked about earlier. You would have probably seen some of those signs. You would have changed your behavior accordingly, and then still gone through and tried to put them on a PIP or get them out of there.
Yeah,
I think it's really hard. Like the times that I've been, painfully close to them, especially in this kind of subordinate relationship. They're in like jobs that I really wanted, really cared about, and we're doing well and everything. But like, you got this like narcissist you got to deal with, is like putting the central role in this job. Like, so it's leaving is an option. Leaving is always an option and should be. And I feel like that's where the internet and black and white thinking kind of comes in. Is like, you can't deal with these people, just leave. And it's like, it's never that simple. And I do think there's strategic value in like figuring out how to finesse the situation. So if it's like being very careful about what you let on, not talking crap about other people, establishing those kinds of boundaries, but still like maybe appealing to their ego in like tiny, small ways, not getting engaged in emotional conversations with them. You can build rapport with these people still, all the while knowing like this isn't going to be one of your best friends and one of your lifelong advocates, but you can actually build like a positive rapport with a narcissist that's going to benefit you professionally. And you can just know that this is like a landmine that you need to kind of navigate around on your path. That's like, I feel like that's the Jedi mind tricks friggin' like Yoda move right there is figuring out how to do that, because these people will be there, especially as you move up.
Yeah. And I would say that's like another point too for establishing as many allies and relationships beyond the narcissists around you. Because if you have 5 people that are saying, yes, Sam, that's a great idea, and this person that's like opposed, that's 5 people that you're going aligned with, and then, they're going to try to save face too. So maybe they'll just, okay. But I think if that person is a narcissist and they're a key decision maker, what I'm trying to say is that the more consensus that you build around that, the more pressure and the more probability that your idea, your objective will push through, because you have support and alliances outside of that one friction point that's out there that's a pain in your ass.
Yeah. Redundancy. But honestly, just this should just be practice in anybody's career anyway, just building great relationships and lots of them. It's an insurance policy on these kinds of people that could potentially be vindictive or harmful.
But I think like that's an important part, right? Because a lot of people will see one no from a person that seems like has a lot of power, and they'll just stop. Oh, that's a bad idea, I guess. And then they'll just stop. Confirm it with other people. Like try it like around that. If you really believe in your idea, see if there's any other like takers around that person. Don't just take that person's no for a no.
I can't wait to call my kid a narcissist tonight.
Yeah. You better grow up sometime, boy.
All right. When he wants to play with blocks instead of take a bath. Like, I'm a little narcissist. Oh, man.
Cool, man. I think that's the pod. Yeah.
Wow. Bang on. All right. Cool. Zip it up. Zip it out.
See you in a bit, or I'll see you on another time.
Zippy-doo-dah. Hey, thanks for hanging out with us at The Workflow. If you like what you just heard, could you take 1 second and give us a like, subscribe, follow, or leave a review on the platform you're listening to this podcast? It will really help us out as we're growing the pod. We'd also love to hear from you. If you have ideas for future topics you'd like us to cover, folks you'd want us to chat with, or any feedback in general, just shoot us a note at workflowshow@gmail.com. Again, that's workflowshow@gmail.com. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.